Welcome back to the reading of The Primal Wound by Nancy Newton Verrier. We are on Chapter 2. If you are just tuning in, Chapter 1 is already posted. I am Alex. I am an adoptee, but I will also giving notes on this book. Now, just a little background if you are new here. This book was written in about the late 1980s, early 1990s. It is written by an adoptive parent, but the author is also a clinical psychologist. Did a lot of research. A lot of these points are still very much prevalent and important to today, and I will highly recommend it for everyone, not only in the triad, so the adoptee, the first parent, and the adoptive parent, but also those that are not within the triad. All right, moving on. Chapter 2, The Connection with the Birth Mother. It is my thesis that in the earliest phase, we are dealing with a very special state of the mother, a psychological condition which deserves a name, such as primary maternal preoccupation. The mother who develops this state provides a setting for the infant's constitution to begin to make itself evident, for the developmental tendencies to start to unfold. There is something about the mother of a baby, something which makes her particularly suited to the protection of her infant in this state of vulnerability, and which makes her able to contribute positively to the baby's positive words. That is a quote from Donald Winnicott. Here we go. Donald Winnicott has done much to contribute to the understanding of the profound connection between mother and child. He has even stated that at the beginning of life there is no such thing as a baby. There is instead a mother-baby, an emotional, psychological, spiritual unit whose knowing comes from intuition. The baby and the mother, although separated psychologically, are still psychologically one. Needless to say, such an idea has tremendous importance for the infant taken from the mother at or soon after birth. So what they're saying is that even though they're two human beings, two different bodies, they are connected deeply on various levels, and it does hurt the baby when they are separated, whether it's because of NICU or adoption or death. There's a lot of trauma there. All right, continuing on. The mysterious link between mother and child. There's a big empty hole inside me, and I need to plug it back up. That would be my birth mother. The adoptee who said this was voicing what many adoptees have told me. No matter how close they are to their adoptive parents, there is a space reserved for their mother, who gave them up for birth. Gave them birth. Sorry. They're talking about the birth mom there. There appears to be more to the biological connection than curiosity or a need for information. When asked why they want to search for birth parents, adoptees will often give a socially acceptable answer, such as wanting health information or having an interest in genealogy, both of which are valid, by the way. Yet, when I asked a more specific question for which parent would you search if you had to make a choice, the majority answered the mother. The reasoning has nothing to do with feeling an unconscious connection with that lost mother which seems profound to them. When asked why they would look for their mother for her mother instead of father, Valerie said, "Somehow there is much more powerful connection with her." Jennifer's response was, "Oh, he was just someone who loved her. She was just the one I was connected to." When I asked Barbara how she happened to see my newspaper ad asking for volunteers for my research, she answered, "Oh, I always read them. I keep hoping that someday there will be an ad for a woman asking to meet someone born July 2nd, 1955, in Omaha, Nebraska. Perhaps the most poignant testimony about this need to be reconnected with their lost mother was given by Sandra, who said, "I think it would be interesting, at the same time terrifying. There is that fear of rejection. I'm torn between a rock and a hard place. I would search for my mother, though I don't understand why, because I've always thought it would be interesting to find out if my father really was artistic. Did he do that for a career? And then I could see definitely where I inherited my artistic ability. I think it would be fascinating. But I don't know, there's that pull back to the mother's bit. The father is much more an intellectual thing, and the mother is more emotional. I'd never thought of that. Very interesting." And she began to cry. So, interjecting my thoughts on that, I can 1000% relate. I had a full connection, emotional, spiritual, psychological, with my birth mom, and searching for her first before going for my birth father, which I still have various thoughts on, and I will make a separate video on that. Moving on, mother versus primary giver. It is curious that seldom in psychiatric literature, so far as I have been able to determine, is there any differentiation made between mother and primary caregiver. Often it is even pointed out by an author that when using the term mother, they are actually referring to any mother figure who acts as the primary caregiver. In other words, it is implied that the mother could be replaced by another primary caregiver, with the child being none of the wiser. I don't believe it is possible to sever the tie with the biological mother and replace her with another primary caregiver, no matter how warm and caring and motivated she may be, without psychological consequences for the child and the mother. An infant or child can certainly attach to another caregiver, but the quality of that attachment may be different from that with the first mother, and bonding may be difficult, or many adoptees have told me impossible. Attachment and bonding. Perhaps this would be a good place to stress the difference between attachment and bonding, as I see it, because here again are two terms which are often used interchangeably. I believe it would be safe to say that most adopted children form attachments to their adoptive mothers. This is a kind of emotional dependence which may seem crucial to their survival. Bonding, on the other hand, may not be so easily achieved. It implies a profound connection, which is experienced at all levels of human awareness. In the earliest stages of an infant's life, this bond instills the child with a sense of well-being and wholeness necessary to healthy emotional development. The significance of this very important beginning of life is now being stressed by many experts in the fields of OBGYN and psychology. The question as to whether or not an adoptee is at disadvantage as a result of missing the earliest imprinting or bonding experience has been raised by many professionals. I will tell you from experience, and here listening to other adoptees, it is in every one of us, whether we've had good or bad experiences with adoption. So let's make that clear. Anywho, Winnicott, as the above question indicates, believe that the biological mother is specially prepared through that bonding to meet the needs of the child, which are communicated through intuition and other phenomena, unobservable to anyone else. This is just a knowing what the baby needs. Unfortunately, too many mothers do not or cannot, because of work or other distractions. Tune in to these unconscious signals and instead rely upon experts to tell them what to do. Experts can't really help, however, because it's just a matter of knowing how to care for a baby, but what this particular baby needs at that particular time. It seems as if a mother may be biologically, hormonally, and emotionally programmed to bond and respond to her baby at birth, in the same way that she is able to do when the fetus was in the womb. There are a series of sensations and events, some of which begin in utero, which aid in the postnatal bonding experience. Things like breastfeeding, odors, eye contact, touching, and familiar sounds, such as the heartbeat and the voice, that a baby knows its own mother at birth, and has been proven over and over again. Some psychologists believe that these events to be stage specific, which means that if they are delayed, as in the case of a newborn separated from their mother, both mother and child will experience grief. An adoptive mother may be at a disadvantage in coping with the affective behavior of her child, for she doesn't understand the form of or depth of the grief or the limitations placed upon her as their mother. The infant has missed something which cannot be replaced, even by the most motivated of adoptive parents. So, just to be clear, what they're saying is because of that deep connection and that bond from utero, there will always be grief and loss, which we know. But the adoptive parent will always be at a disadvantage. The broken bond. What the child has missed is the security and serenity of oneness with the person who gave birth to them, a continuum of bonding from prenatal to postnatal life. This is profound connection from which the adoptee forever yearns. It is the yearning which leaves them often feeling helpless, hopeless, empty, and alone. In working with the adoptees, it is apparent that no matter what happens a month, a year, several years in the future, could even be decades, that period immediately after birth, from when the infant has made the transition from the warm, fluid, dark security of the womb to the cold, bright, alien world of postnatal life, is a crucial period. It is a time when a baby needs to be in proximity to their mother in order to find the world safe and welcoming instead of confusing and uncaring and hostile. At that time, the mother is the whole world for the baby, and their connection to her is essential to their sense of well-being and wholeness. So I did talk about that a little bit in chapter 1, in the beginning, where I said we know now that the first 3 months of a child's life is really the fourth trimester. That baby has and needs that bonding, needing to be held. It's just needs like almost a replication of the womb, but in the outside world. This is part of it, right? It is a sense of well-being, of safety. It gives that bonding rather than attachment. And so there's a whole lot that plays into it that we often forget because they're adopted, or we're adopted technically. Anyway, moving on. It is my belief, therefore, that the severing of that connection between the adopted child and their birth mom causes a primal or narcissistic wound, which affects the adoptee's sense of self and often manifests in a sense of loss, basic mistrust, anxiety, depression, emotional and or behavioral problems, and difficulties in relationships with significant others. Ooh, that was a handful. I further believe that the awareness, whether conscious or unconscious, that the original separation was the result of a choice made by the mothers affects the adoptee's self-esteem and self-worth. So, yes, this follows us throughout our lifetime. Now, whether people want to recognize that trauma or not, that is a whole other thing. We often hear adoptees in the fog saying, well, I don't have trauma, but it will show in various ways, like I just mentioned. So, moving on. I want my mommy. It is believed by some psychologists that children up to the age of 2 or 3 can sometimes remember their birth and subsequent events, but after the age of 2.5 or 3, those memories fade, to be brought up to consciousness only through hypnosis. In any event, there have been reports made by adoptive mothers that upon hearing their toddlers crying at night, they have been unable to comfort them and have been told, I want my mommy. One mother said when she assured her daughter that mommy's right here, she was told, I want my other mommy, a mommy from whom she was separated at birth. Boy, is that accurate or what? Just saying from an adoptee point of view. I can recall a similar experience with my own child. She did not often cry at night, but the few times that she did, although she didn't say anything, she would not let me hold or comfort her. Now I know that I was not the person who could comfort her. A more insightful mother said to her son under similar circumstances, You miss her, don't you, Todd? That kind of acknowledgement of feelings goes a long way towards establishing trust between adoptive mother and child. In most cases, in our ignorance, we just feel rejected ourselves and helpless to comfort a grieving baby. So yes, acknowledging those feelings for the child, the adoptee, is so vital at all stages of their life. The child should always be centered in their feelings. Okay. Birthmother fantasies. Even if they have no conscious memories of her, many adoptees have fantasies about their birth moms. Some also have fantasies about birth fathers and siblings. Anna, who was relinquished at age 2, talked about having a sense of being in her birth mother's arms, although she couldn't actually remember it. She has had many fantasies about her and used to talk to her. She used to cry for her, yet said she couldn't understand why she would cry for someone I never know. Diane, another adoptee who has had many fantasies about her birth mother, created a second identity for herself in which she gave herself the name Jennifer. She felt this identity be somehow connected to her birth mother. She said that she could be more herself during the times when she was being Jennifer. Because I was not being Diane of my adoptive parents' creation. She, Jennifer, had to be a secret though. My parents wouldn't have liked her. Whether or not her adoptive parents would have liked Jennifer may never be known, but it was Diane's perception that they would not. Okay, I'm gonna be like very open right now. And this is like one of the first times I'm admitting this to anyone who's listening. I've done this and I still do it, where you imagine what life was like with someone not your adoptive parents and what the birth family was like. I still do it to this day. It's more centering how I feel around my birth father and his side. But feeling that connection, and yes, I actually did like rename myself, ironically. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna tell you guys, like, I talked about it the other day with a friend, and she was like, "Oh my God, like, you're not alone." Like, other people were agreeing. This was on a live on TikTok, but Whew, that's, like really admitting to ourselves that this is stuff that we do as adoptees is opening. Okay, moving on. Um, Ralph talked of having fairy godmother fantasies about his birth mother. She was a wonderful mother who would eventually come back to claim him. She would intuitively know what he wanted or needed and would always be good to him. Some men, in an attempt to duplicate or recreate the experience of what all knowing mother, trying to turn their wives into mind reading mothers who can anticipate their every need. The wish is understandable, but in reality, the only person who might have been able to have that intuition to their every need without any effort on his part was to make those needs known would have been, as in Ralph's fantasy, the birth mother, and then only for the first few months of their life. Carol said that as a child she had completely repressed any fantasies about her birth mother. Recently, however, she has done some group work concerning her feelings of having been given up for adoption. During one of these sessions, in which she was visualizing her relinquishment, she cried out, "No, don't give me up. Don't give me away." She said that she doesn't know how accurate the verbalizing might be, but since the experience was pre-verbal, the feelings were very powerful. Joan, who was adopted at age 4, admitted to having some fantasies at first, but as she got older, she forgot what her first mother looked like and almost ceased thinking about her. A child is too busy to think about those things. I don't remember thinking much about it growing up. This is a woman for whom denial has been such a valuable defense. It has protected her from her feelings about her birth father's putting her in the orphanage at age 4, as well as her adoptive father's verbal and sexual abuse. Strange thing, none of this has bothered me. She claimed to have had no depression or anxiety, no fears, no identity conflicts, and no problem in relationships. I feel very fortunate that I have no scars like you hear people talking about. Yet she did begin to stutter shortly after having been adopted, and those who know her best say that she can only get so close to people. So what they're saying, what this author is saying about Joan is that even though Joan denies it, it still comes up in other aspects of her life, which we talk about. A lot of adoptees, like I said, will say they have no trauma, but then don't recognize that there are trauma responses that we use naturally. And so we call it the adoption fog, the trauma fog. And it is very hard to come out of. All right, anyway, moving on. Stephanie didn't have any fantasies until a few years ago, when she began to have quite specific images. She said that she had the feeling around Thanksgiving and Christmas that she would be in a house with a lot of people. She believed that she would be in a certain house which she could visualize, talking to her brothers and sisters. She had very strong feelings around the holidays. She has, since that first interview, found her birth mother, who still lives in the state in which Stephanie was born. She has also found many relatives, some of whom live within a few miles of her present home. Now holidays are, as in her fantasies or memories, large, joyous family gatherings. George, rather than fantasizing about his birth mother, fantasized about having a twin brother. He said it wasn't just that he was lonely and needed a phantom playmate, but a real feeling that there was once another one like me. One might wonder if he has a twin from whom he was separated at birth. It's quite interesting. Barbara was another adoptee who fantasized about a sibling. She daydreamed about having a sister whom she called Anna. This sister was going to rescue her, although from what she couldn't say, She and her neighbor would endlessly play a game which they called the Princess and the Slave Girl. That's in quotes, by the way. Barbara was a damsel in distress, waiting to be rescued. I'm being tortured or in prison, or someone has to come and rescue me, usually her sister. Of the game, she said wasn't so much a fairy tale as kind of how I felt. She felt that something was being worked out with this game. Wow, that hits. I always had that sense of needing to be rescued, even though I really don't need rescuing. And that, wow, I can't even put it into words right now. Um, I need to work that out and I'll make a video on that, but that hits home. That hits home a lot. I'm going to mark it in the book. Okay, sorry. I have read the book before, just letting you guys know. But I didn't have a physical copy in my hands at that time because I was listening to others read it. But this is so much easier reading it out loud to you and working this out with you. All right, moving on. The feeling of needing to be rescued is a theme which comes up frequently in my conversations with adoptees. Ken said that he always had the feeling that someday someone was going to come and rescue him from his situation. Although he didn't consider his situation to be very bad, it later seemed to him that it was a wish to be relieved from anxiety, that his birth mother could do that. Even though his early fantasies about his birth mother were positive, the idea of someone taking him away from his adoptive family filled him with another kind of anxiety. Not all fantasies about the mother are positive. Debbie's fantasy was that her birth mother is hard pressed for a better life and leaves me. My birth father is wealthy and kind of finds me and pays all of my bills. One day while riding on rapid transit, she said that she had freaked out and when a companion pointed out another woman who looks like her, she said, "Oh, she could be your mother." Debbie felt panicky and moved to another car of the train. Carrie, who did not fantasize until she began to search, has also had negative feelings about her mother. She has been afraid that her mother wouldn't want to see her, wouldn't care about her, would hang up on the phone without talking to her, and would consider her an intruder. She has since located her birth family and has met everyone except her mother. Everyone has been very accepting of her, but the one person she really counts doesn't want to see her. Although fear of second rejection by the birth mother is common among searching adoptees, Carrie feels as if there might have been something in her mother's attitude while pregnant that with her that made her think that she wouldn't be welcome, regardless of whether or not the initial rejection took place before or after birth. Being rejected for the second time is devastating for the adoptee. Wow, actually, okay, so this makes me think on the flip side with the birth father in my case because I have like no, I don't know how to explain it. So I did end up searching for him and I did reach out. I don't, if he doesn't, I'm not like okay with it. But I'd never felt the need to have a relationship with him. I don't know if it's because of what he did to my birth mother and I felt it in the utero, or because I knew a lot about him growing up and kind of the horrible person that he was. And also it was confirmed when I did search for him. He supposedly changed. I don't know, but supposedly from what I've seen. But it was never spun in like, oh, he's just a horrible person. It was always like, okay, like he's done X, Y, and Z. Like just making it clear there was no emotion behind those facts from those who gave it to me because I had it given by several people, both my birth mother and my adoptive parents, but none put emotion like, you should never go find him. I want to make that clear. Both have been very supportive on that. But yeah, I mean, like, I never ever felt like I wanted a relationship with him or his side of the family. I only wanted a relationship with my birth mom. I did, however, want the cultural information from his side, and that's the only reason I really reached out. Anywho, moving on, we're almost done here. The difference between understanding and feeling. Many people believe that carefully explaining to the adoptee the reasons for their relationship will alleviate the pain of that experience. It is certainly understandable that a birth mother would want her child to know her reasons for surrendering. Yet I maintain that the child will feel rejected and abandoned nevertheless. That is very, very true. An example from my own experience will help to make this clear. One night, my daughter, who was 14 at the time, was talking to me about her feelings towards her birth mother. She said, I understand that she had to give me up, Mom, but why doesn't that make me feel any better? I replied, it is the 14-year-old girl who understands the reasons a lot. The reasons for her relinquishment, but the feelings are those of a newborn baby, who simply feels the loss of a mother, who never came back. The baby doesn't care why she did it, the baby just feels abandoned. And that abandonment baby lives inside each and every adoptee all of their life. Whew, that is so true. And this is why we say it does not matter the situation the first parent was in. Ultimately, like, we as adults can completely understand that point. At the end of the day, the child is still gonna hurt. And that line is so accurate. All right. Confusion between love and abandonment. Although understanding that the reasons of certain experiences in life is interesting and sometimes even helpful, reasons are for adults, not babies. I've heard of adoptive mothers who, when a child expresses anger at the birth mother, will say, "Oh, you shouldn't feel that way after all. She loved you and did what she thought was best for you." The idea that the birth mother loved the baby so much that she gave him or her away is non sequitur so far as the child is concerned. There's an equation here: love equals abandonment. This may contribute to the fear of connecting to the adoptive mother, since allowing oneself to love and be loved may be associated with subsequently being abandoned. This is not to say that explanations should not be given if the adoptive parent may have information. The adoptee has the right to all available information about themselves. Questions about their relinquishment, however, are tricky for adoptive parents to handle. On the one hand, they want to impart to the child that the birth mother was trying to do the very best for that child, while at the same time they don't want that child to fear another abandonment. Adoptive parents are often guessing when it comes to others' motives and would probably do better by being honest with their lack of information concerning the relinquishment. And even if they do know why the birth mother relinquished, it would be presumptuous to believe that this information would take away the pain of having been given up. Thinking and feeling are two very different things. Both are important and need to be acknowledged, respected, and honored. Summary: the connection between a child and their biological parent, mother specifically, appears to be primal, mystical, mysterious, and everlasting. It can no longer be assumed that one can replace the biological mother with another primary caregiver without the child's being both aware of the substitution and traumatized by it. The mother-infant bond taken away forms and the communications between them is unconscious, instinctual, and intuitive. To those researchers who want to believe only that they can observe, this may not seem very scientific. It is the understood by mothers, however, to whom it does not seem to be at all that mysterious. The significance of that bond is confirmed by the increasing numbers of adoptees and birth mothers who are out there searching for one another. Although the idea of searching to reconnect with the biological mother is filled with conflict and anxiety, it should not be regarded as pathological. It should, in fact, be regarded as healthy. We all need the biological, historical, emotional, and existential connection which is denied so many adoptees. For them, searching might seem as an attempt to heal the primal wound, about which there is no conscious thoughts, only feelings and somatic memories, and an aching sense of loss. Alright, that is the end of chapter 2. Just making a note, there are so many good points on this chapter that I want to expand on for my own thoughts, but wow, it does not matter how good your adoptive parents were, and it's making very clear in this chapter that that ache, that bond, that loss will be traumatizing on the child, whether that child will recognize it or be aware of it will vary, right? Like, there are things that we do as trauma responses that sometimes people will not recognize. And the denial is hard, and sometimes they feel like that's okay, but it may come up in the future, whether it's today or tomorrow or a few years from now or decades, it will come up. Thank you guys for listening. I will tune in tomorrow for chapter 3.